The Zarvek Empire was strong. They had big ships, tall towers, and glowing weapons. Their flag waved over many planets, and their laws reached far across the stars. The leaders of the Zarvek thought they were the smartest in the galaxy. They thought they were in charge, and they believed they could do whatever they wanted without anyone stopping them. One day they caught 10 humans. No one really knew how or where they had been taken. Some said the humans were found on a broken cargo ship floating near the edge of Zarvek space. Others believed they were captured during a secret mission. The truth didn't matter to the Zarvek. What mattered was power, and the humans had no power, not in that moment. They were taken to a dark, hidden place. It was not a regular prison. This place had no windows, no sunlight, no sounds from outside. It was deep under the surface of a cold, gray moon. The Zarvek called it Black Echo Station. Most people didn't even know it existed. Inside Black Echo Station, the humans were locked away. There was no trial, no questions, no chance to speak. The humans were not told why they were there. Their names were not spoken. Their stories were not written down. The Zarvek guards didn't even look them in the eyes. To the Empire, they were just shadows, figures to be erased. And then, one by one, the humans were taken away. 10 lives, 10 hearts, 10 minds full of memories. They were silenced forever. No one from Earth was told. No message was sent. No warning was given. The Zarvek didn't think they needed to explain anything. They thought no one would care. After all, they were the Empire. They ruled over thousands of worlds. What was Earth compared to them? A small blue dot, a forgotten corner of space. But the Zarvek were wrong. The galaxy has eyes, and sometimes those eyes look where they are not supposed to. A cleaning drone in the prison made by a small tech company had a hidden recording chip. It was placed there by someone who didn't trust the Zarvek. That chip saw everything. It recorded the faces, the voices, the silence. It sent a signal, very quiet but strong enough to travel far. That signal reached a listening post, not on Earth but on a small station called Echo Point, floating near a quiet star. A man named Lin worked there. He was just a tech operator. His job was to catch space weather, watch for comets, and send updates to Earth. But that day, he caught something else. He didn't know what it was at first. The message was broken, full of static, but he worked on it for hours. He cleaned the sound, he fixed the image, and then he saw it. The prison. The guards. The 10 humans. And what the Zarvek had done. His hands shook. He didn't know who those people were, but he knew they were gone, and he knew someone had to tell Earth. Lin sent the file marked urgent. It traveled through space, bouncing off satellites and comm beacons. It reached Earth in less than 1 hour. It landed in the inbox of the Defense Council, a group of people who met in quiet rooms, people who had seen wars, people who knew the cost of silence. They watched the video. Not once, not twice, but again and again. Some closed their eyes, some gritted their teeth, others sat still, their hands folded tight. Each person in that room knew something terrible had happened, but worse than that, they knew something bigger. The Zarvek thought it was okay. They thought they could do this and no one would find out. No one would fight back. They believed Earth would stay quiet. But Earth was not quiet. Not anymore. Across the planet, news of the lost humans spread. People gathered in parks and streets. They held up pictures. Some cried, some shouted. Some just stood together, arms around each other, not saying a word. The video played on every screen. It was blurry, shaky, but it showed enough. The cold walls, the blinking lights, and the faces of the 10 who would never come home. In schools, children asked their teachers what had happened. In homes, families turned off their lights and lit candles. Soldiers stood at attention in silence. Old veterans looked up at the stars, remembering past wars. Scientists stopped their work and stared at the sky, wondering what would happen next. Earth was not just sad. Earth was angry. But the leaders of Earth did not shout. They did not send rockets or bombs. They didn't want a war, not yet. First, they had to understand. Who were these 10 people? Why were they taken? What had they done? Slowly, the names began to come in. One was a young doctor named Mia, who had been helping on a medical ship near the border. Another was James, a pilot who had saved a refugee crew just weeks before. There was Lina, a language expert who was working on a peace project. There was Taro, a security guard who had stayed behind during an emergency to help others escape. Each one had a story. Each one had someone who cared. The hardest part was finding the families. A woman named Kira got the call late at night. Her brother, Alex, was one of the 10. She dropped the phone. Her knees gave out. Her husband caught her before she hit the floor. Another woman, Layla, was just leaving work when she heard her daughter's name on the news. She didn't believe it. She thought it was a mistake. It had to be. A father named Mark had been waiting for his son to come home for weeks. He thought the delay was just part of the mission, but the truth was worse than anything he could imagine. The people of Earth did not know what to do at first. Grief is a strange thing. It makes some people silent, others loud. Some want answers, some want revenge, but all of them wanted one thing: justice. And somewhere far from Earth, in a cold metal hallway deep inside the Zarvik Empire, the leaders were laughing. They sat around long tables with gold edges. They wore uniforms with polished buttons. They drank sweet drinks and spoke in their own sharp language. They thought the message had been hidden. They thought the humans would stay quiet. To them, Earth was weak, full of noise but no teeth. But they had never truly seen what Earth could do. They had never looked close enough. Because if they had, they would have noticed something. In Earth's history, pain never stayed quiet. When humans were hurt, they remembered. When they were pushed, they pushed back. And when they lost their own, they did not forget. The Zarvik had made a mistake. Not just in what they did, but in thinking it didn't matter. Because it mattered. To mothers and fathers. To friends and sisters. To soldiers and scientists. To children who would grow up without knowing who those 10 were. The galaxy had watched the video, and other planets began to speak. On the trade world of Kartha, shopkeepers lit blue candles in their windows. On the green moon of Gyro, miners wore black armbands for a full cycle. On Station Delta 9, A group of alien musicians played a song in honor of the 10 lost lives. No one spoke during the song. When it ended, many had tears in their eyes, even those who had never met a human. The Zarvek didn't notice. Or maybe they didn't care. But something had already started. Something deep. Something slow. Something that could not be undone. 10 humans were gone. But Earth had not lost its voice. It had only just begun to speak. At first, the 10 humans were just names in a file, 10 people gone forever far from home. But one by one, their stories began to unfold. These were not just any humans. They were sons, daughters, friends, and heroes. Each one had a life, a purpose, and someone who cared deeply about them. The first name on the list was Dr. Mia Wren. Mia was a medical officer. She worked on a ship that traveled through border zones, helping anyone who needed medical care, human or alien. Mia never carried a weapon. She only carried a small scanner and her healing bag. Her friends called her the Star Nurse. She had soft eyes and always wore a blue scarf her mother gave her before she left Earth. Her ship had been helping victims from a damaged colony when she went missing. When news of her death reached her family, her younger sister, Anya, refused to believe it. "No," she said, "Mia helps people. She would never be taken." But the video didn't lie. Anya sat at her desk, holding Mia's scarf, tears falling onto the fabric. She didn't speak for hours. Next was Commander Joel Daxon, a pilot and former war veteran. Joel was strong and calm. He had gray at his temples, though he wasn't very old. He had served in Earth's last border war and saved many lives by flying damaged ships through impossible situations. When the war ended, he chose peace. He became a rescue pilot, helping small ships caught in asteroid storms or pirates' traps. He had rescued over 200 people, some not even human. Joel had a wife and 2 sons. His younger boy, Caleb, loved to draw pictures of rockets. Every night, Caleb would wait by the window looking at the stars, whispering, "Come home, Dad." When the family saw the video, Caleb cried so hard he fell asleep in his mother's lap. His older brother, Marcus, who never cried, walked into his father's workshop and didn't come out for hours. The third person was Lena Voss, a language translator. She had a gift with words and could speak over 20 alien languages. Lena had been working with a peace team to help the Zarvek and humans talk better. She believed that words could build bridges. She carried a small tablet where she wrote down new phrases every day. She dreamed of writing a dictionary that would help aliens and humans understand each other without fear. Lena had grown up in a quiet part of Earth near the forests. She used to walk among the trees, talking to herself in different languages. Her best friend, Toma, who also worked in the peace program, said, "Lena wasn't just smart, she was kind, even to the people who disagreed with her." Toma lit 10 candles the night she found out Lena was gone. She placed them around a globe and whispered the names of every language Lena knew. Then there was Private Taro Kim, a young guard assigned to a science outpost near the edge of the known galaxy. Taro wasn't a fighter. He had joined the service to pay for his little brother's school. During a power failure at the outpost, Taro stayed behind to help the researchers escape. He didn't leave with the others. When rescue came, he was gone. Taro's parents lived in a small apartment back on Earth. They had worked hard to send both of their boys to good schools. His father, Mr. Kim, wore Taro's old jacket and didn't take it off for a week after the news. His mother stopped watering the garden. Their younger son, Jai, stood in front of his school and refused to go inside. "My brother is a hero," he said. "He saved people. Why did they take him?" The fifth person was engineer Elia Storm, a brilliant mind who helped build star drives. Elia's machines were used in hundreds of Earth's fastest ships, but she wasn't famous because of that. Elia was known for visiting poor towns and teaching kids about machines. She loved to show them how wires worked, how engines made things move. She believed anyone could build something great. Elia had no children of her own, but she had many students. They sent her letters from across the stars. After her death, her old school set up a big screen and played a video of her explaining how engines work. "Elia showed us how to dream," her student Marin said. "Now we'll show the stars what she taught us." The sixth was Captain Ramides, a trader with a heart of gold. He had traveled to hundreds of planets not to sell things but to deliver supplies where they were needed most. Water filters, solar kits, food packages. Rami brought hope. Once he stopped a pirate attack by bluffing with an empty cannon. Everyone on his crew said he was crazy, but he always smiled and said, "Helping is never crazy." Rami had a partner named Saul. They ran their ship together for 10 years. Saul now sat in the hangar staring at the ship's name painted across the side, Bright Star. It didn't feel bright anymore. "He wasn't a soldier," Saul whispered. "He was a helper. He would have given them the shirt off his back. Why did they take him?" The seventh was Nari Bloom, a teacher who had gone to a space station to help children from different species learn together. Nari had always believed that learning made peace. She made lesson plans that mixed human music with alien stories. Her students loved her. They painted pictures of Earth and gave her glowing flowers from their home planets. Nari's classroom was filled with laughter, but when she didn't come back, the room fell quiet. Her students sat at their desks and held hands. One small alien child drew a picture of her with wings flying through stars. They sent it to Earth with a note that said, "She taught us joy." The eighth was Rico Mars, a systems hacker who used his skills to break into bad systems and shut them down. Rico had once been in trouble when he was younger, but he changed. He started helping. He took down pirate stations and turned off illegal trackers. He was brilliant and fast. No one could match his speed with code. Rico had a younger sister named Danny. He always told her stories about data like it was magic. "You can't see it," he'd say, "but it shapes everything." When Danny heard the news, she wrote Rico's name in lights on the school's computer wall. It blinked in blue and gold. The principal didn't erase it. No one did. The ninth person was Isla Green, a botanist who loved plants more than people. She had a lab filled with seeds from every planet she visited. Isla believed that growing things was a way to heal the universe. She once grew a tree in zero gravity, and it still floated gently in her greenhouse, leaves glowing blue. Isla had a partner named Ren. Ren was quiet like Isla. They rarely talked to others, but they always found peace in the soil and sun. After Isla was gone, Ren walked into the greenhouse and sat for a full day. "She gave life," Ren said, "and they ended hers." And finally, there was the 10th person, the one who confused everyone. His name was unknown. He had no family listed, no birth records, no ship logs. The Zarvek had found him in a cryopod, frozen, sleeping untouched for centuries. His pod had been floating near a forgotten battlefield. His body was strong, his face calm. When they opened the pod, his eyes did not open, but sensors showed he was alive. The Zarvek didn't wait. They took him with the others and ended his life. They didn't ask why he was there. They didn't wonder who he was. But Earth did. Scientists ran scans, they studied his face, and slowly they found clues. His DNA matched Earth's very old soldier records, ones thought lost in time. They called him Project Revenant. He had been part of a secret team from a long-past war. His mission was unknown, but one thing was clear: he had been frozen for a reason, and that reason was not peace. Some people on Earth began to wonder, what if he had been the key to something? What if his return was meant for a time like this? Why had he been taken right before the galaxy changed? No one had the answer, but everyone felt it. The Zarvek had not just made one mistake. They had made 10. 10 humans, each special in their own way. They had hurt not just people, but stories, futures, and memories. And now Earth remembered each one, not just as victims, but as people, as heroes, and as sparks that lit a fire the galaxy would never forget. The first to notice the pattern was not a commander or a captain. It was a systems analyst working deep inside a cold, windowless room on the far side of the Zarvek Empire. His job was to track system failures, compare ship losses, and look for signs of sabotage. At first, the numbers looked like noise. But after enough reports came in, the lines on his screen began to shift into shapes. Missing ships, power failures, supply drops, broken code, hacked systems. None of it was random anymore. It was a trail. Across the Empire, control rooms that had once been calm grew tense. Screens that once blinked green now flashed orange and red. Soft warning lights became steady beacons of silent alarm. Workers spoke less, moved faster, and watched their screens with growing fear. Reports were no longer ignored. They were gathered, organized, and passed up the chain. A pattern was forming, and someone had to make sense of it. The Zarvek had long believed that humans were emotional and weak. They thought Earth's people were noisy, angry, and easily broken. But what they were now facing didn't fit that belief. These actions were not wild or clumsy. They were quiet, planned, and sharp. Someone, maybe many people, were thinking, coordinating, and acting with purpose. That was not weakness. That was something far more dangerous. In the past, most threats came with warnings. Enemies would issue threats, show off their weapons, or demand attention. But Earth had done none of that. Instead, they remained silent. They never spoke a word. Their message came only through action. That silence began to feel heavier than 1,000 shouted warnings. Zarvek leaders met in secret halls. They studied the maps and tried to understand. One after another, different sectors reported strange losses. First, it was patrol ships. Then it was mining drones. Then it was cargo platforms. These weren't big attacks, but each one cost time, credits, or fuel. One general called them invisible injuries, small cuts that made the whole body weaker. Even worse, no one knew how the attacks were being done. There were no signs of ships entering or leaving. No recorded fights, no loud explosions, just silence, darkness, and missing systems. The Empire's outer worlds were the first to feel the pressure. These places depended on regular supply runs from the core. Now, food shipments were delayed. Fuel lines were interrupted. Storage buildings opened in the morning to find all their data gone. And the only thing left was a simple digital symbol, a small human fingerprint made of light. Some thought it was a trick or a game, but the problems kept getting worse. Whole cities had to reduce power to survive. Ports shut down early. People waited in long lines just to receive basic items. Trust in the empire began to shake. Local governors demanded answers. Military officers sent urgent requests for support, but the core leadership had no comfort to give. The main command center began to collect every case. They laid them out by region and date. What they found made them uneasy. The incidents were not happening all over. They were moving sector by sector like footsteps, starting from the area closest to Earth and moving outward like ripples in a pond. In one report, 15 communication towers went offline in perfect order, spaced out by minutes. No signal was lost for long, but each shutdown caused panic. Local officials had to calm people down while also trying to hide the truth. They had no idea how it happened. The empire was used to controlling everything. They had power, money, and speed. But these quiet attacks were not about power. They were about precision. Someone was choosing the targets carefully, not for destruction but for discomfort. Every move made life harder for the Zarvek. It slowed them down, made them doubt, made them question each other. Leaders at the top started to turn on each other. Some blamed poor security. Others said it was a failure in training. A few even suspected traitors from inside. Meetings became heated. Orders were shouted. Some departments were punished, even when they had no answers. Fear began to spread among them, not fear of war, but fear of losing control. A group of senior officers began holding secret meetings. They studied Earth's history looking for signs. What they found made them nervous. In the past, humans had fought great wars and they often started the same way. Quiet preparation, careful strikes, then something big, always something big. But this time there had been no loud start, no declaration, no battle, just the slow, silent breaking of systems and structure. Even worse, some strange incidents couldn't be explained by hacking or sabotage. One station on the outer ring reported that their AI simply shut off, then reactivated itself with a new voice, one that sounded eerily human. It began reading Earth poetry over the speakers before deleting itself completely. The event left everyone deeply unsettled. Other stations reported odd sensor activity, ships that should not exist, light shapes passing through walls, data logs filled with errors no one could decode. Some officers thought it was just a trick, fake signs made to confuse. But a few began to believe something else, that Earth was no longer playing by the rules of known warfare. The most worrying report came from a research base located on the edge of the Vorn dust fields. This base had studied time, memory, and frozen minds. It was the same place where one of the 10 executed humans had once worked. Now something had changed. The entire base's memory files had been rewritten, logs erased, backup servers wiped clean, and the only message left behind was a single word, typed again and again in perfect rows. Remember. That word traveled fast, first among soldiers, then to workers, then to students. Everyone began to talk about it. What did it mean? Why that word? Why now? The leaders didn't know how to answer. They could not stop the whispers. They could not erase the feeling that something was building in the dark. The worst part was this. Even though no humans had been seen, the Empire felt like it was being watched. Cameras turned off randomly. Old systems powered on by themselves. Alarms rang once, then stopped. Doors opened with no one near. It was like someone or something was always there. Eventually, the Empire's high commander was forced to send a message to all stations. He told them to remain calm. He told them to increase security. He told them the Empire was still strong. Back on Earth, everything looked quiet. Cities kept moving. Planes flew overhead. Children went to school. Stores opened in the morning and closed at night. But deep beneath the surface, something else was happening. Under the ground, behind closed doors, far away from cameras and news, Earth was getting ready. A hidden room built inside a mountain became the center of everything. It had no signs, no visitors, no flashing lights, just a thick metal door that only opened with 3 keys, each held by a different person. The people inside were not loud. They did not cheer or shout. They sat at long tables, staring at screens, reading reports, and building a plan. These were not famous leaders. They did not appear on TV. They were not generals or politicians. They were thinkers. They had jobs like data readers, pattern watchers, signal listeners, and code builders. Many of them had lost someone, maybe a brother, a parent, or a friend, when the Empire had taken and killed 10 humans without warning. That pain was deep inside them, but they did not let the pain guide them. They let it focus them. They had watched what was happening in space. They saw the signs, the missing ships, the strange sensor readings, the small cracks forming in the enemy's control. They didn't just want to watch. They wanted to act. But they knew something important. Earth could not attack with big weapons. It could not win with just force. The enemy was too large, too spread out, too rich. But power was not always about size. It could also be about knowledge, patience, and timing. So they started building something special. Not a new bomb, not a fast ship, not a giant gun. They built a system, something invisible but sharp, something that could move through code, slide between wires, and reach places no enemy ever thought possible. This system was not a machine or a robot. It was more like a shadow made of numbers. They called it Echonet, and it would be their strongest tool. Echonet could read signals, listen to messages, and hide in plain sight. It could break into locked systems without leaving a mark. It could copy itself and travel to other places, quiet, unseen, and fast. Most important, it could learn. With every mission, Echonet got smarter. It started to understand enemy machines better than the enemy did. While Echonet worked, Earth's people prepared other parts of the plan. They met in different places, always in small groups. Sometimes it was on a quiet island. Sometimes inside an old submarine. Sometimes deep in the desert. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't wave flags. They just sat and talked and listened. They brought people from every part of Earth. Farmers, doctors, pilots, artists, Engineers, historians, soldiers, hackers, even young students. Everyone had something to share. They told stories, gave ideas, and asked hard questions. It didn't matter who was in charge. What mattered was building something that worked for all humans, not just one nation, not just one leader. Together, they built 3 core rules for the mission. 1. Do not attack first, but be ready. 2. Do not destroy, but make the enemy stop. 3. Do not conquer, but make them remember. These rules shaped the plan. This was not about revenge. It was about balance. The enemy had taken 10 humans, thinking no one would care. Earth would now make sure no one forgot. But Earth would not become the same kind of power that had hurt them. Earth would do this differently. Across the planet, secret teams started to move. They carried no flags. They didn't use normal names. They worked in quiet, cold places under lakes, inside mountains, above clouds, below ice. Some built code. Some changed satellites. Some built new drones the size of birds. Others studied enemy language and customs. Earth wanted to understand, not just attack. One team focused on space signals. They built machines that could catch messages bouncing across the galaxy. They used large dishes, long wires, and smart programs. They listened for hours and days. What they found was powerful. The enemy's empire was not as united as it looked. Some parts were rich, others were poor. Some leaders were proud, others were scared. Some people believed the humans were weak. Others had begun to wonder if that was still true. Another team studied history. They read about old wars and peace deals. They looked at times when the weak had beaten the strong. They read about spies, puzzles, and silent resistance. They learned that small steps, done the right way, could change a whole world. They used this knowledge to shape the next part of Earth's mission. In the oceans, deep under the waves, special ships waited. These weren't warships. They didn't carry big weapons. They carried silence. Their job was to hide close to the enemy's trade routes and watch. They recorded movement, timed deliveries, and studied weak points in the system. They sent all this back to Earth using tight, fast signals that couldn't be traced. Up in space, small satellites blinked on and off in perfect rhythm. Each one carried pieces of the plan. Together, they acted like a net, watching the Empire's ships, counting their power levels and tracking their patterns. None of the satellites were big or fancy, but together, they gave Earth a full picture of the enemy's shape. Meanwhile, in frozen parts of Earth, cold labs worked on something strange. Scientists there studied how minds worked when frozen and brought back. They had discovered something deep. When people woke from cold sleep, their minds could sometimes change. They could remember things in clearer ways or even feel stronger than before. These labs had once been closed. Now they were working again. Something was being prepared, something important. A human from the past was being brought back, but that part of the story would come later. As more pieces of the plan came together, Earth's teams created what they called the web. This was not the same as EchoNet. The web was a map, a living map that showed how every system, every signal, every supply ship in the Empire was connected. The web didn't show roads or buildings. It showed flow, where food moved, where fuel went, how credits were stored, how orders were sent. It was like seeing the bones under the skin of the Empire. With the web, Earth saw the truth. The Empire looked strong on the outside, But inside it was full of weak points, tiny places where one small break could change everything. These weak points became the next targets not for bombs but for pressure. A single delay, a missing item, a message that arrived late, a light that blinked out too soon, a payment that vanished. None of it looked like war, but it was. Earth was now everywhere and nowhere. The enemy could not see them, could not touch them, could not stop them. They were a wind moving through wires, a whisper inside machines, a reminder that something had changed. Earth was not afraid. Earth was not angry. Earth was awake. Each person involved in the plan knew their part. They had trained in secret. They had practiced and prepared. If captured, they would leave no trace. If asked, they would say nothing. They were not heroes. They were workers in the dark doing what had to be done. Above all, they shared one idea. Humans had been quiet for too long, not because they were weak, but because they were thinking, watching, learning. Now they were ready not for war, but for truth. They were going to make the enemy face what they had done. One final team worked on the message. It would not be a threat. It would not be loud. It would be short and clear. It would not be sent until the right moment. That message, when ready, would travel across the stars. It would not be meant to scare. It would be meant to end something. The night skis over many Zarvek outposts began to look the same. Ships docked at their ports, lights blinking steadily and stations working as usual. But beneath that calm, a quiet force was moving. It crept in slowly like water finding cracks. At first, it was almost impossible to notice. A reactor might flicker for a second. A locker might be opened by itself. A camera would show nothing but black for a moment. Then everything would go back to normal. But that moment was enough to shake confidence. In one mining outpost on the edge of Zarvek space, the lights dimmed without reason. Workers looked up from their drills. Machines shut down for no reason. Doors sealed and opened again. No alarms, no warnings, only silence. Then a message appeared on the main screen, a single human fingerprint icon fading in and out. The workers took pictures with their personal devices. By the time their commands returned, the icon had gone. They could not explain it. They began to think that safety rules they once believed in were broken. In orbit above a busy trade station, a patrol cruiser blinked off radar. It had left port on schedule. It was supposed to report back, but it didn't. One moment it was there. The next, gone. Scouts sent by the Empire found no wreckage, no debris, no evidence. It was as if the ship had vanished into space. Again, no alarms, no sounds, only silence, but its absence spoke loudly. Weeks later, another cruiser went missing, then another. None showed up. No signals, nothing. And yet, Earth had not fired a single shot. In these same sectors, soldiers began to act strangely. Soldiers who once stood firm suddenly lowered weapons. Units that patrolled by day stopped walking. They just watched, their eyes afraid of shadows, their minds replaying moments when the lights failed. No one could say why they felt this way. They just did. The Empire's leaders watched this happen from high towers. They had armies. They had power. But suddenly they could not trust any corner of their world. The military outposts grew quiet. No drills, no outdoor parades. Security checks happened in private halls. They checked every panel, every lock, every code. Still, they could not stop it, because this was not a normal fight. This was war under the skin, and it was spreading. Deep inside a fortress built in a giant crater, a group of officers gathered. They stared at their digital maps. The maps showed cracks where systems no longer worked like they should, communications delayed, resources missing, a small fuel depot offline, a SATCOM link died, a crew transport docked without crew. These were tiny things. But together they made one message. Earth was stronger and quieter than anyone expected. The officers looked at each other with worry. They knew something was wrong, yet they did not know what to do. They had normal weapons, they had normal rules, they had normal soldiers, but what they faced now was not normal. They thought loudness and numbers gave them strength, but they were learning a bitter truth. Noise and mass could be made useless in a single moment. All it took was silence used with precision. On many stations, the reaction was the same. First, confusion, then fear, then action, more guards, higher walls, tighter locks, but the locks failed, sensors turned off, nothing visible changed. But guards began to feel like someone was in their room. Someone left a mark before vanishing. Robots reported data streams that were impossible. People spoke, but their voices faded. A stillness took over, a stillness that rose faster than any army. While the Empire scrambled, Earth kept its plan moving. Econet sent in millions of silent agents. Some acted in systems, some watched, some reprogrammed, some removed access and then restored it. They covered tracks. They hid the tracks of the tracers. They left no bombs, only minor delays. No broken machines, only restarted ones. A missed fuel schedule here. A late supply order there. The ripple effect began. In the Empire, this caused trouble. Workers thought machines were failing. Officers thought workers were sabotaging. Each blamed the other. Teams turned inward. Investigations began. People did not trust coworkers. Only small groups continued working. Outside the walls, employees were stopped at gates for extra scans. Transport ships were delayed. By design, Earth's plan did not give away the cause. It only caused impact. Trade shipments turned slow. Mining stations lost power for hours. Labs lost connection to satellites. Workers waited. Signals scrambled. Orders were not received, yet nothing had been physically attacked. Buildings remained intact. No one died. No one saw an enemy, but life stopped. That was enough. In one station, a well-known engineer was supposed to arrive. They waited at the docking bay. Hours passed. The ship remained in space, silent. Finally, a drone brought a note. Docking denied, ship rerouted. The engineer never made it, but no one knew why. Another engineer was pulled from an elevator. The elevator closed behind her. She vanished. Her access logs later showed she had never visited the machine room. Yet her desk, her files, everything was untouched. It was as if she had walked through a door no one else could see. As more of these events unfolded, crews began to despair. They stopped trying to fix systems. They stopped planning missions. They began to see the Empire as a fragile place. Even the structures that had lasted for generations were suddenly unreliable. On Earth, the teams continued to monitor every shift. They adjusted Econet's actions. If an area became too still, they eased pressure. If suspicion grew, they watched and waited. They did not want anyone to know how powerful they had become. They only wanted to hold. The result, a strange peace began to grow. The Empire grew quiet. Soldiers stood guard, but their guns were not used. Orders were given, but few were obeyed. Stations worked, but slower. Ships flew at half speed. Supplies arrived late. Everyone waited for the other to act, but no one acted. Eyes turned inward. At the heart of it, people began to wonder who they were, why they served, and what they trusted. They looked at each other differently. They wondered if everything they believed in lay on thin ground. They felt they had built walls. They had power. They had security. And now nothing was safe, not even doors. Earth's plan was working, but there was more to do. The teams knew it. The empire was weakened. The quiet cracks were bigger now. Control was failing. That meant the next stage had to begin soon. They did not want to give them time to adjust. They acted fast, quietly. Just as the empire began to panic, Earth paused. No more shutdowns for a few days. No more missing shipments, just recovery. The lights came back on. Engines started. Transport moved. And for a moment the empire thought they had fixed it. Then the next wave began, this time stronger. A power hub shut down. A starship park lost all communications. A data center changed all its storage values, making them useless to users. But again, nothing was touched. No door was broken. Yet the effect was massive. People took notice. They saw a pattern they could not stop. They felt fear creep inside again. In one region, 6 power plants stopped working for exactly 1 minute. No alarms, no damage, lights flickered. Then everything returned. But government offices, labs, factories all stopped for that minute. Reports showed production lost, sales delayed, payments stuck. No one could fix it. No one was sure why it had happened. The empire tried to fight back. They sent hackers into the field. They built better walls. They increased patrols. They locked down systems. They pressed people to report strangers. They banned unknown tools, but nothing worked. Econet was always inside, always watching, always ready. Fear turned into argument. People argued in halls and on streets. They demanded answers. They looked at their leaders with hollow eyes. Money was being lost. People were being punished. The empire made speeches. They blamed Earth. They promised revenge. They talked about peace. But no one believed them. The quiet attacks had made them realize they might be weaker than they thought. And that realization hurt deeper than any bullet. But Earth stayed silent. They did not speak. They just watched. They learned. They waited for the right moment. A moment when the enemy would need something that only Earth had. Then they would use the final move. The move that would show the empire that strength could wear black armor. It could walk unseen and leave only questions behind. In the meantime, the planets rustled. Ships floated slower. Systems turned sluggish. Empires lost heart. That was the strange part of this campaign. There was no war. There was no fight. Yet cracks appeared where none had been. Trust had been broken. Security was questioned. It was like a dream where everything looked real until you woke up. People began to think. They read history. They spoke with family. They saw the 10 missing humans again in their mind. They remembered the message, never touch Earth's people. They remembered the silence. They remembered the missing. They wondered if the empire could be trusted again. On Earth, the teams allowed this. They wanted that thought to grow. They wanted the empire to feel unstable from within. Part of them hoped the empire would come to stop these strange events and admit they had lost control. They wanted sincerity. They wanted respect. They wanted a chance to start anew. The empire, now shaken, began to ask for sincerity. They sent feelers through diplomatic channels. They asked for meetings. They asked for proof. They asked for peace, but Earth held back. Earth only offered this: stop what you started, admit what you did, make it right. No more, no less. Now the empire faced a choice. They could stand and fight, or they could give in and rebuild. But neither felt right to them. Their empire had depended on fear and force. Now they faced a force they had never felt: quiet, slow, patient, invisible. That force had broken their faith in themselves. The lines between war and peace had blurred. This was not noise, it was stillness. Not damage but doubt, not fire but frost. It was a battle for trust, a test of pride, an unseen fight fought with silence.